Hello everybody, this is Christian back from Blue vs. Orange TCG, come back to you with the Seeker Compendium video. What is this now, Christian? Well, let me tell you. On Facebook a few days ago, maybe a week ago now from the time that this is being posted, I put up a poll on what people liked playing and seeing more in the ATP cards, Seekers or Wreckers. Seekers inched out in that poll, and I wanted to share with the winner of whoever won between the two an all-in-one kind of guide for the archetype, what decks you can build, some of the support cards for it, and everything that you need to know to start succeeding playing either Seekers or Wreckers. Well, obviously, based off the title, Seekers won. And so I'm here now to talk to you about Seekers as a whole. I'm here to talk to you about the archetype, the strategies that the deck and the characters and cards typically use to win games. We're going to be going over each Seeker character card briefly, each of the battle cards that's directly supported Seekers. And then we're going to be talking about a number of blank cards, cards with no battle icons. And as if anyone knows, the Seekers love to utilize cards with no battle icons on them. And so we're going to be going over a whole list of options that you can include in your blank package, as I like to refer to it, for your Seeker deck. But we're going to get into that in a little bit here. And for now, I want to go over Seekers in general. So the first point about Seekers is that it's an archetype comprised of Decepticon Planes that allows for a wide variety of mix and matching characters into specific lineups because of some of the characters being able to increase the star limit on your team if you're playing all Seekers. And from that, you can utilize lineups and leverage lineups that utilize certain strategies that I like to call the 3 pillars of Seeker strategy. So what are the 3 pillars here? Well, on the screen here we have Aggro, Toolbox, and Burn. So the first pillar, Aggro. So Aggro is encompassing a lot of the bold keywords that Seekers can give each other. Seekers are definitely known to be played with a lot of heavy orange build decks, and they're just known for hitting really, really hard, and some of the characters and battle cards leverage this in different ways. That's pretty straightforward. The second pillar is Burn. So a lot of the Seeker cards are known for burning your opponent out, either by pinging your opponent's whole board for 1, or just being able to move damage from your Seekers onto another character. It's a very elevated experience of the normal playing archetype strategy, as you've known before. With cards like Bombing Run and Windsweeper, that moving and dealing this kind of indirect damage is something that Planes always have done, and Seekers takes that strategy and tends to elevate it to new levels, and it's a really, really awesome way to play Seeker decks. And then the last pillar here is the Toolbox. So what do I mean by Toolbox? So what I mean by that is Toolbox decks tend to play a lot of 1 to 2 of cards that may not see a lot of main board play in a lot of other decks, but can easily play one of in the main board to use to help get themselves out of either weird situations or push a certain game state that you would like to put onto your opponent, thanks to the abilities of a lot of the Seekers being able to recur either upgrades from the scrap or blank battle icon cards from the scrap, and utilize those 2 types of cards really, really effectively. And we're going to be talking more about the idea of a blank battle icon package. A lot of Seeker decks like to play a lot of blank battle icons, blank battle icon cards, but not every Seeker deck is going to have a whole lot of blanks, or the blanks that they do play is going to look very different. So every Seeker deck's toolbox is going to end up looking a lot different from one Seeker deck to another, depending on how the person that's building and playing it wants to utilize it. And that's kind of the general theme of the 3 pillars here for this archetype, is that not one Seeker deck is going to perfectly match all 3 of these pillars the same. One's going to be more aggro, one's going to be more burn heavy, one's going to be more toolboxy, one's going to be more burn and toolboxy, one's going to be more aggro and burn heavy. It all depends on how you want to play the deck, how you build the deck, and what kind of character lineups that you bring to the table, which is why I find this archetype so exciting to talk about, because there's such a myriad of ways for you to build the deck that fits your own personal player preference. But especially if you really like these types of play styles, if you really love hard hitting aggro decks, if you love burn decks, if you love toolbox decks, this is the type of archetype that I think is going to really interest you as it interests me. And probably the best part about that, of this archetype, is that because of these 3 pillars, it's not a mindless aggro deck. This is probably one of the more intricate aggro decks to play, I would say. It's a deck that, I shouldn't even call it a deck, it's an archetype that really rewards repetition and exploration when building and using this whatever line of Seekers that you're going to end up using. At least found it from my experience. It's not a deck that I would say you can pick up and start winning games left and right. It's definitely a deck that really requires repetition and practice, but it's highly rewarding. It's probably one of the most rewarding decks I've ever played in the game because of this. It's one of those things where if you want to get good at this deck and you put the practice into it, the deck is really going to pay it back to you tenfold. So with that, let's go over the first set of characters for the Seekers. So I categorize the Seeker characters as there's 8 of them currently in existence with the release of ATP 5 coming up here, that you can build your team, your Seeker team with. They're comprised of 4 support characters and 4 centerpiece characters. So getting into the first set of support characters, we have Dirge and Thrust. And before I go over them specifically, I want to categorize a support character for Seekers as a character that usually will increase the total star limit of your team when meeting certain requirements, and usually bolsters one of the 3 pillars for the Seeker strategy of either being a good support aggro character, a support burn character, or a support toolboxy character, or a potential compound of 1 to 2 of those types of pillars. And a good example of this is Dirge and Thrust. These are 2 of the original Seekers from ATP 2. They came out along with Ramjet. So going over their alt mode abilities, Dirge is a 5-12-0, and of course he increases the star limit of your team by 1 if you have only Seekers on your starting team. He can't be brought back from the battlefield from your KO, so you can't ISO function him. But his revenge ability, this is another common theme of Seekers. They often juggle between revenge and brave traits between their front and back sides, so that it makes it more difficult for your opponent to attack into your centerpiece Seeker character. And it makes the overall flow of combat feel really weird and feel very schemy for you to play with. His revenge ability is that when he dies, add up to 1 battle card with no battle icons from your scrap pile to your hand. So this guy is able to take, this is part of that toolboxy nature that I was talking to you about before. He's able to take a battle icon card, there's no battle icons that you put into your deck. If it's in the scrap pile, he could just bring it right back. And there's a number of different things that this could be. This could be a photon bomb. If you have if your opponent's team has a couple characters with 1 to 2 health left, that's gonna be a huge push. This could be an EM24 laser launcher. This could be an I still function. This guy brings back I still function. This could be supporting fire, crash landing. These could be a whole myriad of different things. And Dirge is probably one of the more commonly played Seeker characters in Seeker lineups. For one, because his revenge ability is incredibly powerful, as no battle icon cards are incredibly potent. But also, he also lines more on a toolbox route for Seekers for the 3 pillars. But he also fits the aggro pretty well, given that he is a 5 base attack character for 7 stars. There's nothing to slouch at. And with 12 health and 0 defense, he will at least survive 1 hit most of the time. And you can be sure that any crackback with this guy is going to be huge, as that 0 defense also kind of allows them to play cards like Reckless Charge and Erratic Lightning really easily, because you don't really mind him getting KO'd. Now, the other cone head Seeker support character that we have here is Thrust. He's a 4-10-1 in alt mode. Your starting star limit increases by 1 if you have only Seekers on your starting team again, and he has Brave in this mode. That means if you have a team with Thrust as one of the characters, you're an excellent going second base deck, because you can have your opponent go first and they're forced to attack into Thrust, and more than likely they're not going to be KOing Thrust on the first turn. He may take a nice chunk of damage, but that's going to be okay, because on his reverse side you're going to be able to see that his revenge ability and his bot mode ability more than makes up for the damage that he would take getting swung at going first. So we're going to get into those other sides here. So here we have Dirge and Thrust bot mode sides. Something to take note also, that they are Seekers in both modes, which is important for one of the battle cards later on. And these two specifically are both melee. So you can't play any range cards, you can't play Sturdy Javelin, you can't play Armed Hovercraft with them very effectively. You can Sturdy Javelin them for +2, but it's more than often not really going to be the case. So anyway, going into their bot mode abilities, with Dirge, he's a 4-12-1 this time in bot mode. And then now he gains the Brave keyword once you flip to this mode. Again, kind of showcasing how these two really like to juggle between who wants to be hit and who doesn't want to be hit. As well as the fact that his when you flip to this mode, do 1 damage to one of your Seekers and 1 damage to an enemy. This can set up for certain battle cards down if that you may run, such as Dogfight. But it's also just great to just KO someone out of combat, right? You'd be shocked how many times you leave someone at 1 and they swing with that 1 health character, and you can just flip Dirge to this mode, because you're not going to be flipping Dirge too often, to be honest. That revenge mode ability on his alt mode is extremely strong and makes him kind of a non-flip intensive character. But if need be, you can flip him to this mode, and he does put in a ton of work in certain circumstances when the time comes for it. In comparison to Thrust, who's probably always going to be in bot mode most of the time, because he's a 5-10-1, he gains an attack in bot mode. Each of your other Seekers gets bold 1. So when going second, he gets hit first, then you can flip him to bot mode, and then you can swing with, say, Dirge. And Dirge already has bold 1 thanks to Thrust, while already having a base 5 attack with potentially a weapon or an action fling for going second. It's really, really strong. And his revenge ability is you may play an upgrade from your scrap pile onto one of your planes or Seekers. So this is a really, really strong revenge ability again as well. It's very common to see these two play because the revenge abilities just go hand in hand so well with the really toolboxy nature of these two. You can play anything. You can play Force Field, you can play Energy Pack, you can play a weapon, you got Grenade Launcher. You can play a whole mess of upgrade options onto your centerpiece or your support other Seeker characters when you utilize his revenge mode ability. And that's really important because you can play a lot of one-of upgrades. You can play one-of Scrapper Gauntlets, you can play one-of Emergency Barricade, you can play Crushing Size, you can play so many different types of upgrades that if you want to see them, if this is some sort of upgrade that you want to see on your Thrust Revenge trigger besides just like a generic weapon or a force field, you're going to be able to see it with this guy. And he can be brought back with I Still Function, which is huge because that means if you I Still Function this guy back, not only is he giving, if you have an attack all out, not only is he giving your other Seeker plus bold 1, but when he dies, you get to do his revenge mode ability again. So you're getting even more value from this guy. These two are probably one of the most commonly played pairs of support characters for Seekers, and just for good reason. They're just incredibly toolboxy. They fit the other pillars on being kind of this aggressive style characters, just because they're not afraid to die. Because when they die, they give you more value, and because of that you can play really risky cards like I talked about before: Erratic Lightning, Reckless Charge. You can Grenade Launcher them really early because of Thrust Revenge mode ability. You don't have to save it. And it's just something that I think these guys are going to see a whole lot of play for you if you want to use them as support characters. You don't always have to use them together, as we're going to get into the other two support characters, but don't be shocked if you start seeing these guys on the table. Now, the next two support characters that we're going to be talking about is Thundercracker, Volant Virtuoso, and then Skywarp, Troublesome Teleporter. So Thundercracker came out in ATP 4 and Skywarp came out in ATP 5. They're a little bit different of play styles. But that from Dirge and Thrust. But getting into them now, they really hit on some different types of pillars for the Seekers. So going over Thundercracker, he is a plane specialist, not melee, not ranged, 5-13-0 in alt mode. Your starting star limit increases if you have a ranged Seeker on your starting team. So if you noticed before, Dirge and Thrust, they aren't ranged Seekers, so you're not going to get that star increase from them. You're going to get it from some other Seeker. And then this has stealth while I'm tapped for 8 stars. Pretty basic alt mode side. Again, this is mainly just to make sure that he isn't going to be getting hit going second, or when you're going second. And he also is good for if you have that ranged Seeker character to get that extra star, because once we get to his bot mode side, you're going to see that this character can actually just be a game finisher. He really is heavily leaned into the aggro nature of the pillar for Seekers, but we'll get into that here in a second. Going over Skywarp, Troublesome Teleporter, he's a Seeker plane ranged. Take note that he is ranged, so you do get the +1 star with Thundercracker if you pair these two together. And then if for 491, 6 stars, Skywarp gives an extra star to your team if for each Seeker that has at least 10 stars on your starting team. Again, we were talking about centerpiece Seeker characters before. Skywarp is definitely one to be played with these centerpiece Seeker characters for the most part, and we'll get into that here in a little bit with some example deck lists near the end. For just in his all mode, he's got bold 1. What does that mean? That means he's just going to be a great first turn attacker. With that bold 1 being paired with someone like Thrust, he now has bold 2, just with a basic swing, not even having to flip. Really, really strong. And then just going straight into their bot mode sides here. So right away, going back to Thundercracker, still remains a specialist, still has 5 attack, gains a defense. But here's where he really starts to shine. When you play a card with no battle icons, this gets +1 attack till end of turn, a great kind of reflection of the Wave 1 Thundercracker, where he got +1 for playing an action. This one gets +1 every time you play a blank battle icon card. And then when one of your Seekers attacks with an upgrade with no battle icons, it gets +1 attack and Pierce 1 until end of turn. So if you can't already see, this guy loves blank battle icon cards, but to really boost himself to swing for a huge number right there. One of the most common combos that people like to pair with this guy is to play an EM24 laser launcher and then a Blade Flurry onto Thundercracker. And to kind of get a visual idea of what that looks like, EM24 gives +3, and then Blade Flurry gives a +4 for having a weapon. That brings him up to 12 base attack. But because both of those are have no battle icons, he gets the +1 bonus from both of them. So he gets a +2 if you play both on the same turn, leading him to 14 base attack. And then when you swing with him, because of the EM24 launcher having no battle icon cards, he gets an extra +1 and Pierce 1 going into a character with 15 base attack. The Pierce 1 seems kind of irrelevant, but it's really good going against sub characters like Jazz, specifically to turn off his only take 2 damage ability. This guy is definitely a Jazz killer. This guy is just a straight game ender. There's times when like you want to, like, typically your Seeker centerpiece is going to be the one that's going to be finishing off games, but there's going to be times where you want to be saving Thundercracker to get a huge swing. He also makes like supporting fire, a +1 blank action that lets you attack untapped characters on your opponent's side. This becomes a +2 for Thundercracker. So getting that EM24 and a supporting fire is gonna be, let me make sure I get this right. This is gonna be 12 base without even considering whatever else you're flipping as well, going into any character that you want to. Super, super, super strong. This character is absolutely amazing. Obviously no revenge ability, but he more than makes up for the sheer aggression and power that he gets to do every time he swings and gives to your other Seekers with that second line of text in his bot mode. But enough gushing about Thundercracker. Moving back to Skywarp, he is a 492 in bot mode. Doesn't gain attack, gains a defense though. And then he has just a revenge ability where you get to move up to 1 damage from each of your Seekers on the battlefield to an enemy. Pretty good ability. It's definitely going to be better in some lineups more than others. I'm going to say that most of the time you're probably not going to be utilizing this revenge ability unless you are able to successfully set it up and if your matchup really needs it. Most of the time you'll probably be staying in the all mode for that extra bold 1. And overall, Skywarp doesn't seem to be like the most aggressive type character for the Seekers. But what he gains is team diversity. Being a 6-star that also increases your star limit depending on who else you pair with him is really, really, really important, especially for 4-wide Seekers, which is going to be a deck that we're going to be talking about later on here. Anyway, that's going to be the 4 support characters for Seekers. Next up, we're going to be talking about the 4 centerpiece characters. Starting off with going back to ATP2, our Conehead leader, Ramjet. Hellish Hooligan. So like the other 2 Coneheads, Dirge and Thrust, he is melee in both modes. He is not ranged again. He's going to be busy crashing into buildings. He's a 6/15/2 in all mode for 13 stars. So real quick, just going back to Dirge and Thrust, who are both 7 drops. That's 14 stars plus this guy, 27 total stars, but doesn't fit. But because Dirge and Thrust give +1 star for having only Seekers, it does allow you to play all 3 of them together. Ramjet's kind of a weird character. So starting off with his all mode ability, this can't flip to another mode except with his own ability. So you're not going to be flipping this guy at all for your flips for the turn. At the start of your turn, if this is your only character on the battlefield, flip this flip this. So that's the only way you're going to actually be able to get to his bot mode side. And then when this attacks, move a damage from one of your Seekers to an enemy. Going to his bot mode side right away, he's a 715-2, really big base attack number on this guy. He can't flip back to alt mode. And then when this defends, do 1 damage to the attacking enemy after the battle. Similar to a composite armor type trigger, but happens every time. And then when you flip to this one, you may play an upgrade from your scrap pile. So again, going back to that really like toolboxy nature of Seekers, as soon as you flip this, you're going to get something from the scrap pile. So Ramjet, gonna be completely frank, in the realm of usage that he was meant and kind of designed for, I believe, he's probably the weakest centerpiece character. He has some interesting plays to him. I would say his biggest thing kind of holding him back is the fact that his alt mode ability is rather, what's the word, lackluster, where every time you swing, all you get to do is move a damage, which in moving is really strong, but you only get to move 1. It's only when he attacks, and because of the natural frailty of the 2 other Conehead Seekers, you're just not going to be able to get that ability off too often, at least pairing them, all the 3 the Coneheads together. Of course, his bot mode ability is really strong. One thing I will say though is, going back to like the aggro pillar, Seeker decks typically play orange. They're like orange and blank decks. And so people in the beginning really tried this guy orange, and I think they didn't see a whole lot of success with this guy and Dirge and Thrust back then in ATP 2. But looking back on it, this actually might be a better centerpiece character to be playing in blue. Being able to kind of maximize how long you're in alt mode to continuously keep your damage moving is going to be pretty strong. But more importantly, flipping and being able to use his last line in bot mode to get an upgrade and Thrust Revenge ability to get an upgrade is really good for a big blue deck to actually suit up your big guy like really fast, as well as the idea if this guy can defend for a lot of damage, being able to do 1 damage to the attacking enemy after the battle is actually pretty strong if you can start doing that in multiple turns, as well as the fact an Energon after this guy is 10 base. So you're already sitting pretty well there. I'm going to say that that idea is pretty largely unexplored for the most part with Seekers because of some of the other ones that have already come out. But definitely something to keep in mind if you want to play Coneheads. I would highly recommend checking that out, or maybe even, again, just exploring some other options with Ramjet, Dirge, and Thrust if you're really interested in that. Like I said before, Seekers really does require a lot of experimentation and exploration with how you play and building the battle deck before you can really give a solid judgment. And I would say that people have probably gave up on this guy a little too early, so I would definitely look back and try this guy out if you're interested. You can also pair him up with Skywarp because he has the 10-star or higher, the 6-star. So by doing that, you can actually play Villainous Spotlight with one of the other Coneheads. Or you can play Thundercracker and Skywarp and this guy, which also might be an interesting battle deck option for you as well. Just something to keep in mind. Alright, so going into the next centerpiece character, we're going to go over this one pretty quickly. I don't have a character up here, I have a stratagem. I have a common stratagem for Ramjet Sky Smasher from Wave 1. Remember that vanilla character? Yeah, well, for a star, he now becomes a Seeker, he gets +1 defense, and then if your starting team is only Seekers, your deck can have up to 1 extra star of cards in the deck. So obviously this guy is really meant for Junkion, being paired up with the other 2 only common Seekers being Thundercracker and Thrust. I just wanted to briefly go over this, that this is a team building option for you in Junkion, and Seekers in Junkion is incredibly strong, is really, really good against the wide aggro decks because of another common battle card for Seekers called Aerial Superiority. And just the fact that you have being able to juggle both Brave and Stealth on Thundercracker and Thrust, while also being pretty confident just sending this guy out, your big guy, out turn 1 for a big swing, is something that you can really do in the deck, and it has a lot of interesting plays where it's still an orange deck, but because of the number of blanks and because of the low card pool in Junkion, you can actually play just a lot of orange and blue just static pumps for the Junkion Seekers. And I'll have a list up at the end of the video showcasing a Junkion Seekers list that I've played before in testing. That worked really well, but it's just something to keep in mind. You're probably not going to be playing this guy in Titan 1. It's mainly just for Junkion, but just to let you know that it is in fact an option. Now going over the next centerpiece character for Seekers, and this one is a doozy of a character. This is Starscream Covetous Crony, Seeker plane ranged, so we have another ranged Seeker who is actually the centerpiece of your Seeker team. 5/15 2 in alt mode, and then when you flip to this mode, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put each card revealed that has no battle icons into your hand, and scrap the rest. And then for each card you scrapped, one of your planes or Seekers gets bold 1 until end of turn. And then just gonna jump straight into the bot mode. He becomes a 6/15 2 in bot mode. And then when you flip to that mode, you get to draw a card, and then you get to plan 1. The plan 1 is super important, and you'll see why for its next line, where when one of your Seekers attacks, not just Starscream, but any of your Seekers attacks and flips at least 1 card with no battle icons, do 1 damage to each non-Seeker character on the field. And for you, you're an all-Seeker team that pretty much reads do 1 to your opponent's whole board, unless they're playing Seekers. And for 12 stars, this is one of the most potent utilization and showcasing of the Seeker strategy pillars. This guy kind of does it all to a certain degree. He's incredibly aggressive with that flip to alt mode, where if you don't get any blanks, you're giving someone bold 3 until the end of turn. And he's super burn heavy as well, where that bot mode ability, being able to stay in bot mode and have your other guys swing, effectively making a blank on attack be a deal 3 to your opponent's total team HP, dealing the 1 to every character, is incredibly powerful, and it's so much fun to play. He kind of does it all. Like I said, he's aggressive. He burns your opponent's board just by virtue of being in that bot mode ability. And he also is a little toolboxy with that flip to alt mode, potentially getting you a lot of blank cards, potentially netting a pretty big hand. I would say he's definitely the least toolboxy, least toolbox nature of the 3 pillars. He definitely really leans on aggression and burn. But I don't deny but don't sleep on the fact that because of his alt mode ability and his bot mode ability, this guy can net you a pretty big hand of cards, which means a slew of options for your Seekers during your turn to play. This guy's probably my favorite Seeker to play personally, and he's one that a lot of Seeker decks definitely build around, especially because at that low star cost of 12 stars, you can actually really reliably play Villainous Spotlight with a couple different team variations. You could play this guy, Thundercracker and Skywarp. You could play this guy, Thundercracker and Skywarp, and you get the Villainous Spotlight that way, as well as being that kind of that original Seekers team, really leaning hard into aggression. Or you can play this guy with Dirge and Thrust, again getting Villainous Spotlight, while potentially leaning more on the burn and toolbox nature of those 2 characters to kind of help facilitate a lot of your plays. Or you can do one of the Coneheads, Dirge or Thrust, and then Thundercracker. You're not going to get Villainous Spotlight, but you're going to have 2 incredibly aggressive character options for attacks, and having the revenge of either Dirge or Thrust to be able to get back one of those crucial blank battle icon cards for Thundercracker is going to be a huge boon for you. There's so many different ways to play this character in Seekers, and I can't go over how excited I am to talk about this guy, because I absolutely love this character, and I think this is a great starting out point if you want to see kind of what the Seekers are meant to do as a whole, and then can expound on from there. And then going over the last centerpiece character, the new Legend Mode character Seeker that was introduced in ATP 5, Decepticon Jetfire Repentant Ringleader. So like ATP 2 Ramjet, he is 13 stars, 6/10/2. When this defends, do 1 damage to the attacker. So it's very similar to the Ramjet bot mode ability, but instead of doing it after the battle, it's right away. And then if this would be KO'd by an opponent's card and you play no stratagem, so you don't get Villainous Spotlight with this guy if you wanted to arise, you get to scrap an enemy upgrade, and then you get to grab an upgrade from your scrap pile, put it into your hand, and then you arise. And then when he arises, he remains a Seeker, but he turns into a ranged leader and an Autobot, which can lead to a lot of really interesting deck building options for you to kind of leverage. In his Legend Mode side, he keeps his 6 attack and 2 defense, but he gains a pretty big health total of 18, which means that he comes out as an 8 health character, but his bot mode side is pretty much a 10 to 11 health character with the effective health that Legend Mode characters tend to have. Which makes this guy probably one of the most like survival survivable Seeker centerpieces that kind of exists, given the last ones only have about 15 HP. At the start of your turn, you may play an upgrade from your hand onto one of your Autobots. On an all-Seekers team, that's only going to be Jetfire, but that's going to be totally okay. Because in his second line, when this attacks, do 1 damage to each enemy and draw a card. So he's kind of like a good mirror to Starscream, where Starscream really focuses on aggression and burn. This guy is really big on burn and Toolbox. Being able to have a slew of different upgrades that you can just kind of play for free from your hand at the start of your turn onto Jetfire. This is probably one of the best decks to play like 3 force fields in, because if you have the force field and a weapon in hand, you can just play the force field for free at the start of your turn onto Jetfire, and then play a weapon, play crushing size, play utility, play a lot of different things. This guy is incredibly interesting because I think not only can you play him outside of Seekers, you can play him in a myriad of different shells. You can also play him in a Seeker build that's not just orange, but potentially mixed or blue. There's a lot of different avenues of this guy, and because he's so new, he's relatively unexplored in Seeker variants. Obviously, being able to be paired with the 2 Coneheads, Dirge and Thrust, or Thundercracker and Skywarp are really, really big and are something that should definitely be looked into consideration. Also, potentially a good 2-tall sideboard plan with Starscream might be something to look into. But overall, I would definitely look at this guy and think about what are the different ways that we can build around this guy. And I'll have like an example deck list at the end that I think that I would potentially start playing with this guy. It's going to be an orange list, but it's going to be something that is a good starting off point for people to explore with this very unique character down the road. Moving on to the Seeker battle cards that get like actual direct Seeker support, we have 3 of them in total between the 5 ATP sets. The first one we have here is Dogfight from ATP 3, which is basically a Seeker version of Bombing Run, where you get to move 1 damage from each of your Seekers to an enemy, and then if you have a melee character on the battlefield, scrap an enemy weapon. So it's very well meant to be paired with the Coneheads, it definitely feels like, because getting the move can be kind of difficult, I found, playing this card, unless you purposely set it up. So for example, the Dirge's flip ability to ping 1 of your Seekers and then ping 1 of your opponent's characters. You can ping a character that doesn't have any damage on it, then use the Dogfight to move over 3, or maybe you're just okay with just moving over 2 to KOing a character. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this battle card. I definitely don't think it's a 3 of in most Seeker lists. I bet you there could be something in the future if they wanted to start really focusing on moving a lot more for Seekers, that you may want to play 3 of these. But as of now, 1 to 2 copies is totally fine in a deck. If you want to play to that, you certainly don't have to. And the next Seeker card, this one's really strong. Is Aerial Superiority, a utility, which is Junkion legal, put on only on planes, helicopters, or Seekers. And then when the upgraded character does attack damage to an enemy that has fewer stars than it, do 1 damage to each enemy that has fewer stars than the attacker. And it also gives +1 defense. So it's essentially a squish them like bugs for Seekers, which doesn't sound like something too big considering that Squish Them Like Bugs hasn't been a card that's seen a lot of play in a lot of years. But don't forget that the centerpiece Seeker characters are pretty big starred characters. They're usually like 12 to 13. And so being able to put this on your big character, for 1, giving them plus defense, and then 2, when they swing, so say you swing with Starscream, and you flip a battle icon on attack, a blank battle icon on attack to ping your opponent's board, and then because you're higher started than all of their team, you get to ping their whole board again because of Aerial Superiority. This card can kind of define some decks. There's some definitely like heavy burn strategy Seeker lists that just play 3 of these, and they're incredibly good. And they're very good in Junkion as well, hence why I was saying earlier that Junkion Seekers is really good against 4-wide teams, as you have this card that can help you do a ton of indirect damage to their opponent's whole team, which, as you know, against wide aggro can kind of be the bane of their existence. And then the last card that we're going to be talking about is Nothing to Lose. Now this is a really special card. So right away, it is a star card. So to get this into your Seeker deck, you have to really manipulate, or you have to really make sure that you're using specific teams. Starscream, Dirge and Thrust, Starscream, Skywarp, Thundercracker, Ramjet, Conehead, Skywarp, a lot of different things like that. Getting into the battle card itself, it does have 3 pip colors, a white, orange, and a blue. but that orange is specifically for Seekers, and that blue is specifically for Wreckers. So this is also a Wrecker support battle card, which is pretty interesting. And this card is an absolute doozy, let me tell you. While this card is in your hand, if your opponent's card would cause you to scrap this card, instead, reveal this card and it isn't scrapped. This card cannot be hit by Espionage. If they Espionage orange, even if they choose it, you can reveal it and it's not scrapped. The only way to get rid of this card is to KO it with Chrome Dome. So once you have this card in hand, it's going to stay for the rest of the game. And that's incredibly powerful and great against discard heavy strategies, which Seekers have tended to struggle against before in the past. But that's not all it does. When you play this, one of your characters gets +2 attack and bold 2 until end of turn. Then flip one of your characters from bot or body mode to alt mode. This is one of the best pump actions to play on Seeker Starscream, because if you start off the turn in Starscream's bot mode, you could play Nothing to Lose. He already gets bold 2 +2, and then you flip him back to his alt mode to trigger his effect to reveal the top 3 cards, and there's no blanks there. You scrap them, he gets an additional bold 3, and then you flip him back for turn into his 6th attack bot mode side, where you can draw a card and potentially plan a double or a blank, or maybe you don't even plan anything, and then you can play a weapon. This can lead to some of the biggest swings in a Seekers list. Is this card in Starscream Seeker. It's incredibly powerful. The fact that you can't get rid of, your opponent can't get rid of this is just amazing. This can lead to like 15 to 20 point swings with a grenade launcher, with Starscream and his abilities. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's something that is definitely like worth trying to get Villainous Spotlight onto your team if this is something you really want to push for. There's also times though where you may not even want to play this card against a blue deck. You may fear them boarding into a bunch of end hostilities against you, which this card is significantly much worse at, because you're trying to hit attack for like bold 6 to 8 with Starscream or whoever character you're running with this for. So instead, there's definitely a lot of arguments and things I've done before and found great success to running other orange star cards, such as Bullseye Aegis. Bullseye Aegis is incredibly good in Seekers as well, just to point that out real quick. It's an extra double orange, so you get to play more double oranges, and then you can recur from your scrap using Thrust to put Brave onto Dirge and get his revenge ability, or put the Brave onto Thrust revenge ability. Being able to just put Brave on your Seeker's revenge abilities is incredibly powerful, and definitely worth maybe even the sideboard slot if that's not something you're worth mainboarding, but it's totally worth being put into the sideboard. Let me tell you, it's also a very strong alternative to Nothing to Lose. So that was the direct support, battle card support that Seekers have, and the characters. Real quick, I want to go over a bunch of blank pip battle icons, because I talked a lot about that already with the characters, and even the battle cards are often blank pipped. Something to really talk about is that Seekers love these blanks, as if you can't already tell. And oftentimes, one of the most diversifying factors when playing a Seekers list is how many blanks you run, what blanks you run, and why you're running these blanks. This is like probably one of the most exciting things about the deck for me, because the versatility and toolbox nature of the Seekers with blank battle icon cards is so versatile. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way to run this. I think there's definitely ways where you can run too many if you're not leaning into the blank pip toolbox strategy enough. There's definitely a whole lot of really interesting ways you can go about it. And just to go over some of the cards, we've already talked about cards like EM24 Laser Launcher just being kind of a staple in Seeker decks, just because Thrust and Dirge both have access to this, and Thundercracker being a card that really loves seeing the EM24 Laser Launcher to help just boost your Seekers even more, and himself because of his bot mode text. Area Superiority, we talked about this. You can play this as a one-of if you need to in your Seekers list as part of your toolbox. Maybe you run 3. Maybe you run really heavy into the burn pillar for Seekers and you want to run 3 of these along with Photon Bomb. Maybe you're so into that burn strategy that that's what you want to do. Maybe you only want to play 1 because you're a little bit more of a mid-range deck. Maybe you're playing some blues in there actually to try to get a little bit of some defense, and this card really amplifies your defensive capabilities while still maintaining that you're going to be doing some extra damage through the squish ability. But you also have cards that kind of trap your opponent. Like Seekers by nature are kind of the scheming aggro deck. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of thought that goes into playing and building a Seekers list, which makes them so fun to play, that even your blank pips can kind of reflect that. Let's talk about a really specific card that I think a lot of Seeker decks really can play for kind of free, is Supporting Fire. Supporting Fire is such a strong card in Seekers. One, because you can recur it back from the scrap with Dirge, or you can happen to flip Starscream, and you can maybe just grab a Supporting Fire off the top of your deck from his all mode reveal ability, and then set up a Supporting Fire turn. It's something, or even like Thundercracker making this a +2 attack any of your opponent's characters now, or untapped characters. It's just like, it's such an incredibly valuable card. It's probably one of my favorite blank pip cards to include into Seekers. I think there's some lists that don't need to run this, but it's definitely something that as soon as your opponent sees one Supporting Fire in your list, they are concerned. They're going to be worried about it the whole game, and sometimes it's going to catch them completely off guard. But there's also times where you just may not even want a Supporting Fire, like their last bot. There's some really weird, intricate, like wheel turn scenarios where this doesn't really work out, it end up being the best play. But again, that's just something you learn as you play the deck. A Crash Landing. Now, this card is a card that I never even considered for Seekers until shout out to Ziggy on the Discord, making top 4 in one of the Titan 1 events in ATP 3 with Seekers, running 2 Crash Landing, I believe, and watching him play it to such finesse was so incredible. For one, your Seekers all have pretty high attack values, ranging from between 4 to 5, and being able to just play this on their play mode, flip to their bot mode, swing, being the only tapped character, your opponent is forced to send in a character against Crash Landing, and forcing whatever tapped character they throw, if it's the wheel turn, or maybe they're forced to go into a Brave Thrust or a Brave Dirge, and now they have this Crash Landing, and now they're not exactly sure how they should go around trying to build this, or go around this, because this could potentially mean that one of their tapped characters is going to be dead just because they swung into it. It's very similar to Erratic Energy Grenade, but a lot more interesting in my opinion, being able to grab it with Dirge. It's also really good on Thundercracker. It's a fantastic card with Thundercracker. Just being able to get into some really big attack numbers, and Thundercracker himself being a base 5 attack Seeker that gets an extra attack just from having this on him or any of your other Seekers. Incredible value, and one that I haven't played before, but I'm really excited to try it out in future Seekers lists. Steamroll, your highly aggressive list, you're going to swing big into one of their guys, you're going to kill another one with the Steamroll. An I Still Function. You can play I Still Function in this list, and it's so good with Thrust, getting his revenge ability off again. So great to bring Thundercracker back, put an EM24 and swing again with him. There's this I Still Function is a card that I was pretty off for a while when I first played Seekers. I'm slowly starting to warm up to it and seeing how valuable it is in certain strategies. Again, not all of these battle cards, you're not going to want to fit all of these battle cards into Seekers. You're going to want to pick a couple. 2 to 3 probably, and seeing how many copies of each of those cards you want to fit into your deck for your blank package, for your toolbox. There's so many different avenues you can go with this. Do you want to be a super hard hitting Seeker aggro deck, Blade Flurry and EM24 laser launcher? Do you want to burn your opponent out, Aerial Superiority, Photon Bomb, Crash Landing? Do you want to be this really toolboxy deck that's able to bring out certain problem solving cards against your opponent? I Still Function, Supporting Fire, Dogfight, Crash Landing, all these cards do so great in Seekers, and this isn't even all the blank battle icon cards that exist. You got Ready for Action that you can choose. There's plenty of other things that you can play into your blank package, but I just wanted to give you a brief summary of some of the ideas that you can put into Seekers when deck building, and showcasing why this archetype is such a diverse thing to play and build for. Alright, so rounding off some of the last section of this compendium, I just wanted to go over a couple deck lists. So these are going to be some ATP4 and ATP5 deck lists that I've personally ran before with Seekers that I've really enjoyed, and just kind of showcasing how I've built some of my Seeker decks in the past. So this one here is Starscream, Dirge and Thrust with Villainous Spotlight into Nothing to Lose, or No Regrets, as it's often called, as I like to call it. This is a really intense aggro deck. This is really meant to be a full frontal aggro deck by using bold. So I'm playing a lot of cards like the Nothing to Lose. I'm playing 1 ISO function to be able to get back that thrust, to be able to get some really nice swingy aggro tempo plays. 3 Armored Assault, because you play some blanks. Sometimes that bold just doesn't always like do you enough favors, and so sometimes just getting a static +2 is really good over something like Supercharge. But if you really want to play a lot of blanks, or you play not a lot of blanks, you can totally play Supercharge instead. I'm playing a lot of armors in here: the Force Field, the Bashing Shield, the Scrapper Gauntlets, all because the Armored Assault and Force Field and Scrapper Gauntlets feel very free because you can get it back with Thrust. Only 1 EM24 laser launcher. I'm pretty heavy on the weapons, but I didn't feel the need to include more than 1 EM24 in this list personally, as this isn't really a burn-centric list, but it is playing 6 blanks, so you're going to be still seeing some burn in here, as you see like the 1 Magnetic Dysfunction Ray. And the 1 Photon Bomb that I have is just like kind of escape cards, for lack of a better word, if I really need them. Excuse me. But overall, and just to go over the blank package again: 1 ISO function, 1 Photon Bomb, 1 EM24, 3 Supporting Fire. I really wanted this deck to play a lot of Supporting Fire, a lot of bold cards, and really to kind of punish my opponent for not being prepared for the Supporting Fire big swing turns. And that's kind of what that blank package really showcases, while also having a little bit of some extra things in there to help me in different game states as well. I've had so much fun. I've had success with this list. I've won a tournament with this list before, and it's definitely a great starting place if you want to play some Seekers. Here's another interesting list. This is a Dirge Starscream Thundercracker list that really is pushing for the big swing with Thundercracker, with Blade Flurry and EM24. As you can, but also leveraging Supporting Fire again. As I said before, I love Supporting Fire. So my blank package is literally just 3 M24, 3 Supporting Fire, and then 1 Blade Flurry for that really big swing. This is really a mid-rangey type of deck. I'm only playing 25 oranges, but I'm also playing 7 blues. It's not a whole lot of blues, but also being able to play the Trithelium Shield and the Scrapper Gauntlets, as well as the 1 of Aerial Superiority. Oh, the other blank card, I'm sorry. It was 8 blanks with the Aerial Superiority. As just like this really great upgrade blank option to trigger Thundercracker's ability a whole lot more. This one, I think this one's a little bit more rough of a deck list. This is one I've top 8'd with this list before, but I think it definitely has tons of room for improvement. I think you could play even more blues. I think you run 3 Leap, 3 Energon Axe pretty easily, as well as probably even like another blue pump in here. For your other characters, and really make it a little bit more mid-rangey. But I really enjoyed this list, and this is another great option. It really leans heavy onto the aggro side again. Here's a Junkion Seekers list. So this one, Junkion Seekers doesn't have as much build diversity as like T1 Seekers do, in my opinion. But I still wanted to showcase that this is probably a pretty cut and dry list that I think a lot of people would be running. In Seekers, again, only 25 oranges, but we're really focused on the static numbers and not what you're going to be flipping. You got the 2 Aerial Superiority. You can easily bump that up to 3 if you expect a lot of 3 white aggro. I have 3 Blade Flurry and 3 EM24 Laser Launcher for my blank package again, as well as like a lot of the typical Junkion staples, such as Armored Assault, Leap into Battle, Incoming Transmission, Sharpened Talons, which unfortunately does not count as a blank battle icon. But still a very solid list for Junkion nonetheless. And then the last list that we're going to be talking about for this compendium, before I let you go out and explore the wonderful world of Seekers and deck building, is 4 white Seekers. So this is a unique Seekers list that is different from the other Seekers list, where it doesn't play a centerpiece character. It just plays the 4 support characters. With Skywarp, you can now play 4 white Seekers. This is a pretty rough list as well. This is my initial rough draft for the list. I played a game or 2 with them. Excuse me, my goodness. I played a game or 2 with them in testing, and it felt really good. But there's definitely tons of room for improvement in this list, I think, if you wanted to explore with it. I'm running 6 blanks, 3 EM24, 2 Blade Flurry, and then the 1 one-shot stand as my blank package. Being 4 wide, you actually do have a lot of really interesting decision points for play in terms of who you want to swing first, how often you want to be going second or first, and what blanks you want to play. I could easily see where you just don't even play the Blade Flurries and you just play I Still Functions instead as an option. But this is a very, very aggressive list. Definitely 0 burn. This is not a burn heavy list in the slightest, I would say. Kind of toolboxy. You're playing the Thrust and Dirge, so you're automatically going to have some toolbox options there anyway. But you really are going to be this big, wide aggro deck that's going to be preying upon other 3 wide similar aggro decks in the metagame if you choose so. Anyway, guys, that is the entirety of the Seeker's Compendium. That is the entirety of the Seeker's archetype as supported by the time ATP 5 is released. Again, I just want to say I really, really love this archetype. I've absolutely fallen in love with it. I've fallen in love with how much thinking you have to do, all the amazing decisions you get to make just by deck building, the themes. I love all these things. Excuse me, I've been talking a lot. I really love all these things with the characters, and I really implore you, if you haven't played Seekers before, or if you've been interested but never really sure exactly how to build them, or played them before and just didn't see the results that you were really hoping for, pick them up, give them a try, and really start to explore with the deck, with the archetype, because this archetype really rewards players just by trying them out, just by trying out new things, by mixing up different types of cards in the list and seeing what sticks. And all in all, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give some love in the comments below for Seekers. Let me know if there's anything I didn't cover in this video that you would love to know about Seekers. Any questions, advice, hit me up in the YouTube comments, hit me up on Facebook, or direct message me on Discord, Facebook. I'm around all those parts. Until then, guys, have a fantastic day. Adios.